Do a push press, you go to push, you get to this point here, and you always have that point where it's just a sticking point. Now, obviously, one of the things is that the more legs you use, the further the sticking point will be as such. Because that last phase, okay, so here we're going to look at fault finding and how to work around some possible sticking points that you might have with overhead press. Now, when I say overhead press, I'm using a standard bar here, right? But this can be used for anything that you do overhead. It could be log, it could be strict, it could be push, it could be whatever. So try and look at this as like to use for yourself to try and fault find, or for your clients that maybe they're having issues with. And I'm gonna just break down really like the 4 areas of what we're gonna be focusing on. So the first thing then that we're gonna be looking at is when you're looking at your overhead press, one of the areas is a pin press that could be the sticking point. Now, this is specific obviously to the position that you've got the sticking point. So let's just say, for example, we're doing a push, we'll do a push press. So we're gonna do a push press, you go to push, you get to this point here, and you always have that point where it's just a sticking point. Now, obviously, one of the things is that the more legs you use, the further the sticking point will be as such. Because that last phase is that tricep push at the end, okay? So one scenario is, could you project more push so that then therefore the sticking point is further away, and it's probably far enough away then to be able to lock out. But the other thing is you focus on from that area wherever you get to. So let's just say we get to a 90-degree angle, and that's where you always fail, okay? So one thing you can do is do a pin press. You can either do this standing or seated, it's completely up to you. But if you're going to do it seated, it'll be in this position here, and we will basically be working from that 90-degree or wherever it is. You can set this up wherever you want to set it up, but you're working from that point here, and we're going to be working high reps to start with, because you want to make sure that you're getting through the actual reps and you're working that muscle from that dead stop position, okay? Every rep, it wants to be a dead stop position, and we're getting the reps in. So again, looking at that, we're breaking that specific part down that you want to be focused on. So we're looking at wherever it is, and again, like I say, it could be low down, it could be high up, whatever it is. And what I'd do is I'd work high reps on it, and throughout your blocks, throughout your phase, bring the reps down and build up on the weight so you can really work on that. So the next phase of this then is the rack stability. Now, this, really think about what I mean here, okay? Rack stability, again, if you're doing a log press, if you're doing a strict press, whatever it is, it's about keeping the stability within this rack position, right? So imagine if I've got a log in my hands here, and I'm in this position. This is the start position before you do your press. Now, it's really important that the elbows don't come down, because as soon as the elbows come down, the weight comes forward, you go onto your toes, you lose your rep. Sometimes you can get your rep, but ultimately it's not going to be the best way to do it, and it's not the strongest way of doing it. So what you want to do is you want to lock in this position and really force into place. Log's probably one of the most advanced ones, or the dumbbell press, single arm dumbbell press. But if we were going to use like the bar, for example, it's the exact same thing. So from this position here, where is your rack position? Now, this is my rack position here. So what I'm trying to emphasize and focus on is that this doesn't happen at all when I go to do the press, whether it be strict or push. Let's just say it's push for argument's sake. But as I go into my push press, you want to make sure that my rack, so i.e. the shoulders and the exact position that the bar is in, does not move. Nothing moves of the rack. It stays exactly where it is, and then I can then go into the press. Okay, so how do we do this? the way you do it is, as well as like building the muscle groups around, i.e. rear delts, Cuban press, all that sort of stuff that's going to build that, the way we also build this is focusing on the rack position. So as little as it sounds, it simply is, when you're in this position, making sure that, so you're working time under tension, so work nice and slow into the dip and then into the press, but really focus on what you're doing with your shoulders and how you're keeping it compact, okay? And it really is about like mind to muscle, if you like. So watch your videos back, look at things and look at you know, what it might be for your client. So look at them and make sure that there is no movement within that. The log is one of the most obvious movement ones, or the dumbbell again, because quite simply, as you're holding the log, you can see your elbows actually drop. And because the log's so big, that tends to happen more often. So that's one of the most obvious ones. But again, like, just look at whatever the implement is, just make sure that as you're holding it, you see no movement in the elbows, therefore there's no struggle or within that stability. The way that you might want to build that is holding more weight in the arms than you would normally hold, and just hold it there for like 10 seconds at a time, re-rack it back up. 10 seconds at a time, re-rack it back up. Build that up to 20 seconds, 30 seconds, however you want to do it, but you're just emphasizing that muscle group and making it work harder, so that therefore it's got less chance of actually failing, if you like, and moving around. So the next phase within this then is looking at your tricep strength. Now, this really is just about me explaining it to you. So triceps play a huge part in pressing, okay? And I think they play a bigger part than most people probably think. So make sure that you do plenty of assistance work, triceps, but the point is here, I would break them down so you're doing lots of different versions. You might be pressing down with a rope, you might be doing kickbacks with a dumbbell, you might be doing overhead rope work, you might be doing tricep dips, but try and think specifically that you want to be working. So we're trying to work that top phase here. Okay, again, you might be doing dumbbells, you might be actually doing these lockout ones with dumbbells, but we're trying to work that top phase. So try and think about everything you do, you work to that range. So typically, if I was to do tricep dips, I would go just to that top phase. So you're really overloading, but you're going really heavy. And therefore, you're focusing on the exact range of movement that you need to be doing. And again, like, go high reps with these and slowly bring them down, going heavier as you go. But just basically hit different angles. You might want to do a JM press lying down. Yeah, so you're doing all these different versions, but you're really emphasizing the tricep to make sure that you're getting plenty of blood and plenty of work into the triceps. So the last part of this phase then really is the dip. Now, I find this a very, very important part for, obviously, not strict press, but for the people who are doing push press or push jerk, whichever one you want to do. But it's understanding how far to dip your hips when you're doing a push press. Now, again, this is so important because so many people that I see will go either too far or not enough. Now, I know that sounds quite like vague, and it's like, well, what is right then? But it is really down to you individually, okay? Now look at it like this, right? If I was to dip any further than that, down to here, you then start to go into a phase of actually, one, working other muscle groups, two, the weight that you've got that you're trying to project up, you've lost that tension. So what we've got to do is we've got to find, and this is different for each person because obviously length of limbs and stuff, but you've got to find the right point that is low enough for you to get to. Like mine, typically, I know it's there because I've done it enough times. It's this point here, and then I've got to switch my projection the opposite way and then go onto my toes and drive through the roof. So you've got to try and get that gauge to be right. You won't know that till you do it enough times to figure it out, right? But you've got to slowly go into position and jump onto your toes. And you've got to test it. You've got to try and be as fast as you can. And again, video it, or if it's for your client, just watch them and make sure you get to that. You know the point when it's too far, right? Because quite simply, the gravity plus the the weight of the bar or implement, whatever it is going to bring you down. Once you get past the point of actually, your like small dip, your quarter dip, you then go into more of a squat, and then you go right deep into it. And again, I've seen people before, they go right down into a squat, they've lost that they've then got to push through because they've lost that tension. They've got to push through the muscle. By the time they get back to the dip phase, they're too tired and they're fatigued. So then you just completely lose that and you don't get any pop from the hips. What we've got to try and do is encourage a pop from the hips, okay? So go through that pattern and really pop the hips and try and engage your glutes as much as possible so you can really get a pop in the hips, and then you go onto your toes. And you do that all as one movement, and that's what's called the triple extension. So we've got to try and extend through 1, 2, and then your ankles is the third. So hips, knees, ankles, all as one projection onto your toes. The more explosive power you can build, the easier the press will be, the further the bar or implement will go, and then the more chance you've got of locking it out. It really is as simple as that. When you look at your best sort of like people to look at for this, I'd probably look at Big Z. And this is where, like, again, I think people can get a little bit confused where they think, how much do I need to dip then? Because Big Z doesn't hardly dip at all. He doesn't, because he's perfected it. And, you know, he's really figured out that actually he does the tiniest one, yet he's very good at a strict press. So again, it's individual to every single person. You need to figure out the best for you, but you just need to try test it and film yourself or look at your client or whatever it may be, and just go through the processes of figuring out what it is. Obviously, the heavier the weight, the more projection you'll need. But that's where, on the back of this, you know, box jumps, glute bridges, deadlifts, power cleans, all these things will help towards it because they're all the same sort of hip development movements that are going to help you. So again, look at your dip to see if it's too low or not low enough, and try and perfect the position so you really get that power and understand exactly where you project the power from.